Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking about NSX product and solution. And we're going to cover NSX architecture and its components, and also talk about what NSX portfolio and so on. Let's get started. Before we start, I just want to mention that our series of lessons only cover NSX 4.0, which is the latest version. So there's some differences shown here as compared to the previous version, 3.0 or 3.1, 3.2. The first one is NVDS. NVDS has been phased out in 4.0. It's totally gone. So we have to set up or install and configure VDS 7.0 plus, or we call it VDS with NSX. So we don't support NVDS anymore since 4.0. We also don't support an KVM hypervisor, only support vSphere environment. And in terms of ARB or NSX RV, previously we have a feature where you can configure your ARB via NSX user interface. Now, since 4.0, you have to configure RV or ARB via its own user interface. That's the three differences. And this is chapter 1. So when we look at NSX use cases for scenario, customer can use, and we have now here, we listed some of the use cases are listed here. Automation, because we define SDDC, and NSX is one of the component of SDDC solution, software defined data center solution. So we define a virtual network. So that means we have a flexibility to get it automated. So you can use other tools or other program languages to control the NSX or automate NSX, or to build up the automatic network via these tools. Another use case is DR, or for resiliency or just redundancy data center. So, for example, a enterprise had planned to install or just build 2 data centers networks. So NSX can provide a workload mobility between the 2 primary data center as a secondary data center, also provide you a DR and when DR feature and the functions. Here we have a federation, which we will get into that in a little bit later, in the later chapter. So another one is the biggest one use case is the security, because security always changes. So NSX, we have a distributed firewall, which is pretty old feature for NSS. And also we have a gateway firewall for north and south traffic control. We also have a malware prevention, or ATP, or detection and prevention functions and features. And when it comes to multi-cloud, NSS has different form factors. You can you can install NSS on-prem in your private data center. You can use NSS in a public cloud. So NSS has different form factor on different type of clouds. We also can leverage NSS to have ability for the Kubernetes or a modern application. So as you know, NSS can be leveraged by using its network function when we use Tanzu, vSphere with Tanzu. So it is kind of like a network components within the vSphere with Tanzu. And also NSS team provide open source CNI, open source network container networks, which is Antria. So kind of like Flannel or Calico, those kind of CNI. So CNI is a network used in the Kubernetes. So those are 5 use cases for customer to leverage NSS. So let's talk about NSS product and portfolio. Sometimes we just mention or think about NSS as only one product, but we kind of like combine some of the product into the NSS umbrella. Here we have 6 products. So if you have exam questions, so you have to remember these 6. One is NSS. This is on-prem form factor for your private data center. This is a public cloud form factor named NSS Cloud. It is based on the NSS and add some the public cloud features on it, and also have distributed IPS IDS. With this module this function or this module actually is a part of NSS, but it is separate as a separate serial number or separate product or separate function to be sold. And SD-WAN, as you know, a couple years ago, we acquired VeloCloud, which is #1 on the Gartner quadrant. So SD-WAN means the VeloCloud SD-WAN product line. And here we also have a hybrid cloud extension, shortened to HCX. This is a tool to help you migrate your workload from the from your data center to the cloud, or from the cloud to the data center. So it's a tool to help you migrate and your workloads. And also we have load balancer, which is, we also call RV, is advanced load balancer. So we have 6 products under the NSX portfolio. And if we look at the upper layer here, we have some management and automation. So by using this management tool or automation tool, you can, for example, intelligence for VMware area, or formerly called vRealize, automation tools, and also Mesh Advanced. We can leverage these high-level tools to talk to NSX to fulfill some automation, to fulfill other management automation functions. So from other perspective, we also have a term VCN, Virtual Cloud Network. That means we have a private cloud. We can support public cloud, also hybrid cloud. We can leverage edge, node, branch. So we have, you know, if you look at the NSX portfolio, we can you can leverage these 6 and in different scenarios, public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud, and so on. Now here we talk about components or architecture. So if someone is familiar with installation of NSX or components of NSX, they knew in NSX we have several planes. Normally, we emphasize these 3: management plane, or control plane, and data plane. And in some exam questions, they also mention consumption plane. Consumption plane means that there's an upper layer, so they can consume NSX by using some of the API or user interface. So this is a consumption plane. It means the upper layer application, for example, CMP automation tools or some other automation program languages. Within NSX, we have 3 planes: management plane. Management plane is used to build interface to user interface and API. You just have responsibility to, you know, to take care of this interface to the upper layer. For example, you have a new configuration, and the management plane just help you evaluate your configuration and store your configuration, and also interact with other components. For example, this container plugin or CSM vCenter. So this is what the management plane is for. And also we talk about the control plane. Control plane, you just remember runtime information. That means that control plane is used to gather runtime or real-time data. For example, there's a dynamic protocol. So they have to deal with their updates and some of the routing algorithms. So those are real-time data or runtime data. Now we look at this data plane. Data plane, it is the biggest characteristic for data plane, which is distributed. So when we look at the data plane, for example, we have 10 ESS hosts in your data center. You want to configure and use NSX. So that means 10 hosts can be your distributed data plane. Data plane means these components is used to forward your data and encapsulate, doing some encapsulation and decapsulation sort of things, and those data forwarding job. And we have different forms of data planes. For example, we NSX support ESSi host. In the vSphere environment, we also support KVM, but in the 4.0 version 4.0, we don't support KVM, so just skip it. We also support bare metal. Bare metal means Linux physical server and Windows physical server. We just support bare metal and the ESSi host now. We also have a special particular form factor, which is Edge, NSX Edge. And NSX Edge seems like a container that a logical network component can sit on. We'll talk about it and get into detail in the later chapter for the Edge node. We also have a public cloud support, so the data plane can extend to the public cloud. So that's it for the whole components and NSX architecture. Now we take a close look at the management plane. So in management plane, we divide it into two parts. One is a policy role, one is a manager role. Just remember, policy role is very close to the upper layer API or user interface manipulation. And sorry. When the policy role finish checking your configuration or give you an interface for user interface or API, then they transform your configuration to the manager or just to another form. For example, the NSX, native NSX command or raw command form to the manager. In manager role, there's a persistent storage, which is a Corfu database. So we can evaluate the configuration and also store your configuration into the Corfu DB. So then the management role provides another interface to the controller role. It's lower to the lower layer. Then controller role will pass the data or the command to the distributed data plane. Okay. So let's talk about data plane further. So when we talk about data plane, we just bring in a new term, which is transport node. In vSphere environment, you just roughly think that transport nodes is equal to ESSi host. So in vCenter, we call ESS host, right? But in NSS, we call ESS host as a transport node. Because here for example, you have finished all the configuration on the ESSi host, and you can see the status and the states on your vCenter for this ESSi host, right? And then when you wanna deploy an NSS onto this ESSi host, you have to do a additional procedure, which is preparation, or just transport node preparation, or ESSi host preparation. That means that an NSS manager or NSS system will install some of the additional NSS kernel onto the original ESSi host to make it to be a eligible transport node. So in summary, in NSS world, transport node is a ESSi host. So that means, yeah, we already talked about edge, we talk about bare metal. Okay. So get into the transport node, we have some small components or functions within the transport node. Here, when we finish preparing the transport node, as I mentioned, is a particular procedure for preparing your transport node. So NSS just install MPA and also LCP module onto your ESSi host. MPA is an agent to be used to talk with the manager. So this is one channel of communication, and LCP, a local controller plane, is used to talk with controller or CCP. Control plane, centralized control plane, or center of the control plane. That means we have a control plane channel, we have a management plane channel to TCP via two TCP ports. So, and we also in this NSS transport node preparation, we installed ESSi virtual switches, where you can install one virtual switch, or you can install more than one virtual switch. That depends on your config, the TN configuration. So here we just emphasize that there's a switch, virtual switch. For example, in this case, it's NVDS or VDS 7 plus, 7.0 plus, or VDS with NSS switch inside of the TN. Okay. Sometimes we can, if you take the exam, you can see you might see this word, APH, the application proxy hub. I think that describe the same thing. So as I mentioned, there are two communication channels, and one is for management plane communication, and one is a control plane communication. So there's only one term here in the middle, application proxy hub, and talks to NSX proxy. NSX proxy also MPA, LCP, the same thing as we just talked about. Now we just want to show you the essence of NSX, what NSX is. NSX is a type or implementation of SDN. You can, I would say, or almost everybody would say that it is the one implementation of SDN. But originally, since VMware just launched the SDDC concept, so NSX as important components for SDDC or in SDDC structure. So the NSX just provides a virtual network module on top of physical network. So here we have physical everything. We have physical compute, which is server or CPU memory. We can leverage by leveraging vSphere. We have virtual machine. We can separate physical CPU and memory into different virtual machine. The same thing, we have vSAN here. So we simulate the virtual storage by using the vSAN. Now here we have NSX. NSX can be used to simulate the virtual network on top of the physical network components. For example, I'll give you the example in a bit. Here we have another perspective for the essence of the NSX. So now we just talk about the physical layer, physical network. So no matter what your physical network is like, or you have just a campus network or enterprise physical network, no matter what you have, just the physical network, you have router and switch and layer 3 switch, you just they're just connected with each other, and just you have a lot of physical servers plug onto the whole network. That's a physical network layer. So, but on top of that, we install NSX, and NSX just simulate or just virtually build up a lot of network components and network services. For example, by using NSX, we can create virtual router, virtual switch, virtual load balancer, virtual firewall. So those are very traditional, typical network services. So by using NSX, you can create as many routers and switches and services as you can to support the whole enterprise use. So for example, in this case, we have a virtual machine, a green virtual machine 2. two virtual machines. We want them to talk with each other. So by using NSX, we create virtual cable, virtual layer 2 switch, and another virtual cable connected to another virtual machine. So that this virtual machine can talk to another virtual machine by using NSX virtual network. So how do we deal with this? How do we just put up those virtual stuff on top of that, on top of the physical network? Now we're using overlay tunnel. I think everybody just who are familiar with network. We have a lot of tunnel technology. We have GRE, we have AS line. So many different tunnels, IPsec. So from physical network perspective, we kind of like, let's say we want to drive to work, to the office. We have to drive through different roads, pass different segments, and finally we get to the destination. Here's our source. But now we just put up a bridge or like a highway or bridge. When we enter this, go up to this bridge, and just only one hop, you just get to the destination. So you don't need to worry about what the traffic is from under the hood, or just within the underlying layer. We just think about this is a one hop tunnel. So that's the algorithm for the whole essence for NSX. So by using overlay tunnel, which is unique, we'll talk about that in a later chapter. So by using the overlay tunnel or Genie, we can create a very flexible network and to also fulfill automation. This is a typical NSX topology. If you're familiar with physical network, we have an access router, we have access switch, we also have an aggregation switch and core switches, which are pretty typical for the campus or enterprise network. But for NSX, we also have pretty similar topology or terms. Right here we have a tier 1 gateway, which is access router, a small router. You can use it in a different department or just to connect a different segment or subnet. This is another tier 1 gateway for another department or another building. So it's you can think of it as access router. And then traffic will be aggregated to the aggregation router or core router. This is a bigger one. It's a virtual router in NSX. So we have absolutely we have cable, but it's a virtual cable. It's a software-based cable. You don't need to plug it in and just configure and create the logical stuff and give them configuration. So they can be plugged in automatically. And on the right side, we have another perspective. So if you are an NSX engineer, or if you are you're going to pass the exam or prepare for the exam and VCP-NV exam, you have to fully understand two perspectives. As an NSX engineer, some additional tasks or stuff you have to care about. For example, here, because T1 or T0 logical components are located in the edge node or sitting on the edge node. Edge node is a VM. So you have to check the health of the edge node to ensure that every T1, T0 virtual components are still okay or all right or are operational well. And also you have to care about the communication with manager and the vCenter because they are combined together. But from a network point of view, you only just care about the left side, the network topology. You have to draw a very detailed topology for a network administrator to have a whole picture. Okay, let's talk about the management cluster. That relates to the installation of the manager. Because I didn't mention that in the previous slide, we have a policy role, we have manager role, we have controller. These three logical components are installed by manager VM. So that means you can install this manager VM by using the OVA import to create a manager VM. And this VM includes three components: policy role, manager role, and the controller plane. So that means here you can install one manager VM, and the second and three manager VM can be deployed automatically in NSX or via NSX user interface. So now we have three VM as NSX manager, and they become a cluster. And in addition, we can give this cluster a cluster IP as a front-end VIP for you to deploy other services, which is talking to the NSX easily. So here, which you just mentioned that there's an option parameter. You can configure this cluster IP for the whole NSX manager cluster. So with the completion of the installation of the manager, you can type in get cluster status in the manager CLI. So you can check to see if every component is okay. Your controller component is stable, manager is stable, policy role is stable. So everything is okay. So that means your manager cluster is all okay and working well. So that's everything in for this lesson. Just to recap, there's a VCN concept and the portfolio, some of the products under the portfolio, and also we talked about different planes, the management plane and roles, a control plane and policy roles. We also talked about data plane and the transport node. And yeah, that's everything for this lesson. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next lesson. Bye.